In this enlightening episode of the Fatherhood Challenge, my guest reveals a groundbreaking insight into achieving personal growth. If you're stuck or at a plateau in life and either you can't see what's next or how to get beyond where you are, this is one you're not going to want to miss. So don't go anywhere.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I have Bryan May with me. Bryan is a highly sought-after breakthrough consultant who blends business acumen with spirituality to help individuals break through personal and professional barriers. He's also a dad. Drawing from his personal experience, Bryan now helps others overcome limiting beliefs, self-doubt, and life's inevitable plateaus. Bryan, thank you so much for being on the Fatherhood Challenge.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Bryan, let's start with your story. What's the story behind how you became a breakthrough consultant?
The story is this. A couple of years ago, I had a tragedy in my life, and I lost my wife. And so my son and I kind of rebuilt. He was only 1.5 at the time. And I was very spiritual beforehand. And it took me more onto that path. And so, when you have such a young boy, you don't want him to have negative feelings towards these kind of events that are obviously negative towards us as adults, right? And even obviously if you're a child, 5 and up, which he's 5 now, of course, it would be very sad for them. But at 1.5, it's a hard thing to deal with. So I didn't want him to have negative feelings towards it. So that's what kind of broke me out of this shell that I was in and really forced me to keep living life, if that makes sense.
Is it normal to hit a plateau in life, or is there ultimately something wrong with us or in us that is creating the plateau?
I think it's totally normal to hit a plateau, right? I think we hit multiple plateaus depending on the areas of our life, whether it's going to the gym and not being able to lift more weight than a certain amount, whether it's not being able to make more money than a certain amount. So I think plateaus are super normal. And, with breaking through, with being a breakthrough consultant, right, the whole point is to break past limitations. The whole point is to break past those plateaus by gaining clarity, right? And so we want that new level of understanding. We want to turn that moment of an obstacle or a challenge, and we want to transform it into an opportunity. And so, as they say, it's the darkest before the dawn. And we need to push through. And sometimes we get stuck because we run out of options of how to push through. And sometimes people don't want to push through. And so for me personally, I don't take on clients that, let's say, they know they're in some kind of a trouble, they know they hit some kind of plateau, but they don't want to push through. It has to be someone that, hey, I really want to get to the next level, but I don't know how, or I don't know what's stopping me. But once you say, hey, I want to get past this, I want to get a Ferrari, well, then your brain can start thinking a little differently. And so it is very important to understand that these plateaus are totally normal in life. And we have to want to break through that. And when you get to a point that you don't know how to break through, you need to seek help, just like you would if you were in the gym, you would hire a personal trainer, It's just like that.
What you went through was often what's referred to as the dark night of the soul. And oftentimes, for me, I've hit it twice in my life. And every single time, it's a terrifying experience. And I have at first tried to avoid it. That tends to be the instinctive reaction. You just want life to go on, and you don't really want to go into that dark night place. There are bad consequences to be paid over a long period of time for avoiding that dark night experience rather than just going through it. Going through it is terrifying. It is not a fun place to be, but who you are coming out on the other side of it, if you've gone through it well, is often a place where you can find your identity and purpose. And it sounds like that's kind of like what you went through.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's multiple layers. And I think what people have to realize, which they know, but a lot of times we push it to the side, is that different people feel differently. People react differently, right? And so there's not just one trick for everyone. And so you have to work with people based on their personality and based on their previous experiences. And so I think that a lot of times we think that, oh, well, if I go through this dark night of the soul, I'm never going to feel negative things again. And that's not true. You can go through it and still feel negative emotions. And I'll give you an example. This just happened to me. You know, last week, Monday and Tuesday, for whatever reason, I woke up Monday morning and I just was not feeling well. It was like a sadness was just very heavy on my heart. And in May of this year, I lost my mother. She passed away. And my father is, he's going through his own grieving process. And he wanted to remove some of my mother's clothing from the house. And we ended up bringing a lot of the clothing here and going through it. And so I think it was a combination of that. And I felt very heavy Monday and Tuesday. And what I remind myself, even though I'm sad, I'm happy that I'm going through this. I'm happy that I am experiencing these human emotions. And so I try to enjoy it. I try to enjoy those waves of up and down. And it's very important because, listen, that's how I connect to my late wife. That's how I connect to my mother. And I have my little playlist on Spotify. And I enjoy it. I enjoy the sadness. I rest. And then Wednesday, I woke up like a superstar. Wednesday, I hit the gym harder than ever. And it was a great thing. And I think one last thing, you have to remind yourself. And I think that remembering and reminding yourself, people always talk about affirmations, but just simply reminding yourself of things is very important because the brain has a tendency to make us forget, if that makes sense to you.
Now, you've been through significant personal challenges. We've talked about the loss of your wife, and then we've also talked about the loss of your mother, which I know what that's like. When the death of my mother really is one of the big things that sent me spiraling into my second dark night of the soul. Death just has a way of really waking up some things in you, questions that you may have had. And that's what sent me into that direction. But you also have been through some health challenges as well. How have all of those things shaped the way you coach?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of it is about resilience, right? A lot of it is about getting knocked down and getting back up. When you're a child, it's very normal when you start to walk to constantly fall. And it's normal when you start and learn to ski that when the first time you ski, everyone knows they're going to fall. And so the question is, are you willing to keep getting back up in order to get to the black diamond? Are you willing to keep getting back up in order to learn how to run? And the only way to do that is by continuously falling. Michael Jordan has scored many, many points. But what's even more impressive is how many shots he's missed. I believe it's around 12,000. And so the best baseball players have missed the most balls. And so we have to really remember that failure is really a way to get success. And so between health issues, I have Crohn's, which is a stomach disease. And I just wouldn't let it stop me from living my life. I know people personally that have some kind of a stomach disorder and they just stay at home. They have a work from home job. They play video games. They never go out. They don't have many friends that they see in real life. And listen, their whole life is built around their conditions. And now some conditions are more controllable than others. But for me, I don't take no for an answer, whether that's in sales, business, negotiating. And I like win-win, but it has to make sense. And you can't just accept that first no.
Talk about your successes for a little bit. I think that's important given the light of where you've come from and for the audience to understand what is possible. You have Crohn's. You've made a decision not to let it hold you back from living your life. You've had 2 significant deaths within the last few years. So brag about yourself for a little bit. What are you doing with your life?
My previous life in New York was all real estate. So I own property in Brooklyn. I own property in Maryland. I own property in Florida. I've sold over 300 houses as a real estate agent. I owned my own office with partners. We sold, I've sold over $250 million worth of business. Collectively, the company probably did half, 500. And we ended up working out a deal with one of the stars for $1 million listing. And so he ended up acquiring the company. I did a lot of flips in New York, buy the house, fix it up, sell it. And then, after everything happened between COVID, my wife passing, moving to Florida from New York. And so I worked, and I still do work with someone named Marshall Wilkinson, who has, he's done $3 billion worth of deals. He owned a construction company in New York that was bought out for $100 million. And he's my mentor. Plus, I work with him on his projects. I like the lifestyle. It's nice freedom, right? Because whether I'm in my house, which I am right now, or I'm in Dominican Republic, which I go to, I can still do these kind of things. It's a lot of freedom. And I like to give my clients a lot of attention. Even though we do have these weekly meetings, if someone's having an issue, if someone's having a challenge during the week, and if anyone's gone to talk therapy or any kind of therapy, if something happens, let's say, I'm just making up an example, you get into a fight with your partner on Monday. Now, if you're seeing someone, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a consultant on Friday, that emotions have really died down from Monday. Chances are you've already made up. If you didn't make up, chances are it's less than it was on Monday. And so you're not getting the full picture. And so what I do with my clients is I like them to at least leave me a voice note, not a text message, but a voice note, so I could really hear the tonality of their voice. I could hear the words they're using. And that's how we define negative self-limiting beliefs, right? When you're in that moment, because when something negative happens, usually you go back to default. So I like to use that so then when we do meet for our session, we could really dissect that voice note. And I think that's really, really important.
On this program, we've been a broken record about knowing your identity and purpose and the consequences, what it can do to your life, how it can even destroy your life if you don't find it. What role does knowing your identity and purpose spiritually play in helping dads get unstuck?
Well, it's for sure it's a big one, right? I mean, there's no question about that. Authenticity is something that I always speak about, right? It's something where I look at it almost as like a comedian, where I love comedy. I love stand-up comedy. And I'm sure that we've all seen a comedian on Netflix or HBO or in person where sometimes it just falls flat and other people are laughing, and sometimes you're hysterical laughing. And so when we find our true identity, it doesn't matter what audience is in front of us. We're going to, be ourselves and talk like ourselves and still, of course, be respectful. And identity and purpose is so important. A lot of the clients that I have are older, in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They've made a lot of money and they're looking for a legacy. A lot of these guys have made money doing very boring businesses. And so like one guy, he owns a lot of taxis. So boring business, but he wants to leave a legacy to his family. And so it's very important to understand identity and understand your purpose in life. And really what it turns out is that most people's legacy and purpose are their children, or maybe it's charity, but it's leaving something to future generations, right?
The legacy is absolutely right. It's a product of finding your identity and purpose. So that becomes the next step that is on your mind to achieve. And for dads, this is huge. That is ultimately what every dad would want.
Totally. As we move on in life, we do need to change our identity. And changing our identity doesn't mean we aren't being authentic. If we were the same exact identity that we were in high school, that actually would be a problem. And so if you think of it as a business term, because really I've done a lot of business consulting, a guy that owns a company, let's just say an HVAC company. He goes and he deals with air conditioning systems. Well, when he first starts out, he just created a job for himself. He's going to house, he's fixing people's air conditioners. And then as he grows, he needs to hire people. He needs to buy more trucks. He needs to do advertising, and he needs to grow. And so he changes his identity from a business operator to being a business owner. Now, if you take that and extrapolate it, when you deal with like a Fortune 500 company like Goldman Sachs, the guy who's the CEO of Goldman is very different than that guy who owns HVAC company with, let's say, 5 trucks, even 10 trucks. And so you have to switch these identities, and people really do fall into certain identities. There's men out there and women out there that can take a company from 0 to 100K. There's men and women out there that can take a company from 100K and turn it into $1 million. And then there's people out there that can turn $1 million into a $100 million company. And those are all different identities. And the same thing is true of fathers. The identity that you need to be a father of a baby is different than of a teenager, and it's different of a 20-year-old, right? And so how we teach our children is mostly the way we do things ourselves, right? Monkey see, monkey do. I think that really raising a child is you raising yourself and giving yourself a second chance at raising yourself.
I've said this many times. Children do what they see their parents do. It's another reason I think it is so critical to be solid with your identity and with your purpose. Because if you have that down and you are active about leaving a legacy, guess what your kids are going to learn how to do?
You know, there's like an easy metaphor to think about. You have a father that's a drinker and he's drunk all the time. Maybe he still works, right? There's a lot of functioning alcoholics. And so you have 2 sons, and one son never drinks because his father's an alcoholic, and the other son is an alcoholic because the father's an alcoholic. And it's very hard psychologically to know why one child, because, right, they live in the same house, why one child goes to the one extreme and one child goes to the other. And so really, we just have to do the best we can because we don't know exactly what mutation of genes our child's going to be. And for anyone out there that has 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, I know the other day you had someone on that was a father of 6 kids. You know, you start seeing all the mutations of genes. And so you have to be the best version of yourself to give your children a fighting chance. Because it's not fair to say, well, I'm going to be an alcoholic or I'm going to do negative things just because, okay, this way my kids won't want to be that negative person. Like, it's too much of a gamble. That's not the right way of doing it. It should be, I'm going to do the right things and I'm going to teach my kids to do the right things, and then they will follow in my footsteps.
Can you explain how small, consistent actions can lead to major breakthroughs in life and why people often overlook this approach?
Totally. The simple answer is it lacks instant gratification. That's the simple answer. To go to the gym, let's say lift one weight, maybe go to the bathroom, maybe take a shower, maybe sit in the sauna for 10 minutes. You're actually doing something. You're physically in the gym. You're not at home. You've made yourself way to the gym. Now, you're not going to become Arnold Schwarzenegger by doing that. At the same time, by actually getting to the gym, there's a much higher % chance that you are going to do one extra exercise. You're going to walk past the machine and just say, okay, I'm going to try that. You're going to walk past the weight and just do one bicep curl. And so the more you go, there's a higher chance you're going to do more and more. And what a lot of people do, as we all know, by February, most people quit their gym membership. They're like, oh, I'm going to lose 100 pounds in the next month, or I'm going to gain 100 pounds of muscle in the next month. They set themselves up for such failure that it's an all or nothing proposition. Instead of like water hitting a rock for many, many years and putting a hole in the rock, consistency is the most important. So I always have clients really take whatever their goal is, because I still want them to dream big. This isn't about lowering the goal. It's finding out how to get there in a consistent manner. And so doing these small, consistent steps, you get massive transformations over the long haul. So like a good metaphor that I like to use is, let's say you have a shovel and you're digging a hole. Instead of looking every single time you put the shovel into the ground of how deep the hole is, and instead of looking behind you to see how much dirt is behind you, just set a timer for 30 days. Go out there every day for 30 days and dig. And what you're going to find is that after 30 days, that hole is going to be massive. And it's much easier on the brain than saying, I'm going to build this massive, massive hole and then getting defeated right away.
So it sounds like the secret really is small, reasonable, realistic goals for where you are, coupled with very disciplined, consistent habits that you can easily follow.
Yeah. I mean, really, what is discipline? Discipline is really putting your emotions to the back burner. Everyone is emotional based. We are all triggered by emotions. No one makes fun of each other anymore. I was born in 1980. Growing up, everyone made fun of each other. Everyone had fun. Now you make fun of someone and they cry, they break down because they're weak. And so we can't just say, I'm not feeling like doing X. I do a lot of sales. There's many days that I don't want to pick up the phone. And a lot of people that are salespeople that reach out to me, they don't reach out to me necessarily for sales coaching or sales training. They actually reach out to me for call reluctancy. A lot of people reach out to me because they're like, I can't pick up the phone. I'm scared of talking to people that I don't know. And that's where it's fascinating, right? Because we really need to understand that all this is about ourselves. All of this is, what do I want best for me? What do I want best for my child? And the truth is that we have to put emotions aside and get the things done.
You often talk about the importance of reframing adversity. Can you share some examples of how reframing a negative situation can turn into an opportunity for growth?
Absolutely. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and many modalities, that's the principle for it. That's the job of it. It's to reframe. And I think that everything in life can be reframed. And so, for me personally, there's been many things, right? But like, let's just say the loss of my wife, I have reframed it that, hey, I need to live my life to the fullest. I need my son to live life to the fullest, because who knows how much time we have left. And so it's not about not being sad, but it is about getting things done and doing the best we can and enjoying life, because this is what it takes. And so with reframing, listen, every negative thing, like think about this, a make-believe guy, he's working, he gets fired because of layoffs. Now, we all heard stories in the past of people like that committing suicide. We've heard stories of people really going down into like the darkest hour. But what is it? If you reframe it of, now I get that opportunity to start that business. Now I get this opportunity of time, because now I don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. and take the train and work all day. Now you can still have the opportunity to find another job, but in the meantime, you have the time. So with that time becomes an opportunity, a reframe to work on yourself. Now you can get to the gym. Now you can read that book. Now you could take that online course to learn a new skill. And so when you redirect it and reframe it as, okay, now I have the time to do these things, you can catapult yourself into the next area of your life. So I really believe that reframing is important, because anytime something negative happens, you want to ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What is this that's causing that I can gain an opportunity from? And the truth is, there's an opportunity in all of these things. And until we really look at it like that, what happens with our brains is we have a belief, and so we find supporting data of that belief. So right now, let's say economy. If people think the economy is bad, they're going to start looking for people that are doing bad in their work. They're going to start looking for people that are laid off looking for people that are losing their job. They're going to look for news that's negative, and they're going to reinforce that idea. Now, if the same person says, hold on, just because the economy might not be doing as well as it was in 1985, there's still people out here making a lot of money. There's still businesses out here thriving. And then when you start looking at the road, all of a sudden you start seeing Ferraris. All of a sudden you start seeing Mercedes. All of a sudden you start hearing about stories about a guy selling his company for $100 million. And so what happens is you start gaining these insights of, oh, I'm supporting evidence that even though the economy might not be as well as it was, people are still making money. Because misery loves company, and it's very easy just to surround yourself by miserable people to help yourself feel better.
How can dads listening connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, or get your coaching?
My name is Bryan May, Bryan, Bryan with a Y. And you could either go to my site, bryanisAmazing.com, or check me out on Instagram, bryan.may, BRYANMAY.
And just to make things easier, if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode, look right below the episode description. I will have the links that Bryan mentioned posted right there for your convenience. Bryan, as we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now?
You have an excellent chance to reteach yourself. You have an excellent chance to redevelop yourself through your child, to raise your child as you would want to be raised, and really be present. And listen, we're all working, we're all hustling. Make time, just like you schedule time to watch your TV show, or you schedule time to go to the gym. You have to schedule time to be present with your child. And so at least bare minimum 30 minutes a day, really be present. Really, and I'm not talking about just watching TV with your child, but, do the homework with him or her. Do an outside sport with them. Really be present. And as you're in that present moment, the biggest challenge that I can give you is start giving your children affirmations. Start saying, you are amazing. You are loved. You are strong. You are confident. And have your child repeat it back. I am strong. I am confident. I am enough. And if you do that every single day, just imagine the self-talk that child's going to hear. Imagine how amazing that child is going to be. And so, just for example, when I'm walking my child to the bus stop, he's in kindergarten. Every day we walk to the bus stop, I give him affirmations. When we're in the car and I pick him up from school, because he takes the bus in the morning, I pick him up in the afternoon, I'm always giving him affirmations. And the other thing is really praise based on effort. It's like, wow, you tried so hard. It's okay to make mistakes. Because once again, like we spoke about at the beginning, if you do enough failures, you will succeed. And that's really what my message is.
Bryan, it's been an honor having you on the Fatherhood Challenge. Thank you so much for all of the wisdom and experience that you've shared with us.
Thank you. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.